Hello, I'm Ron Landis. Welcome to my studio. Hi, Ron here. We're going to break it up a little bit this time and show you a demonstration I built for the Texas Renaissance Festival back in 1991, I believe. And we had a guy come out and video the whole demonstration, and I voiced over it about 10 years ago. We took a trip out to Segovia, Spain to meet with some people. I had actually been doing some work on the restoration of the water wheel powered Segovia mint there that was built in the 16th century. And so the voiceover kind of pertains to the people I was working with there. I haven't seen it in a few years, so I hope it's still somewhat relevant. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Thanks. Hello, this is Ron Landis, and you're watching the demonstration of the Royal Mint of the Renaissance Festival, filmed at the Texas Renaissance Festival in October of 1992. And this is a demonstration I spent 2 years putting together. It's kind of the culmination of a demonstration I have been working on since about 1982. And I had the opportunity to build this for the festival, which I quickly grabbed onto because at the time I had just returned from Segovia, Spain, where we were working on the conception of the Segovia mint restoration there. So I was anxious to get my hands dirty and learn how to build, engineer, operate, and maintain this sort of early technology. So this starts out where I explain the engraving process in the demonstration. It's something I don't go into a whole lot of detail in this exhibit, but later on at the coin shows I used to like demonstrating the engraving by using a camera and a video monitor where I could blow up the details of the work I'm doing. And here at the, that's my partner Joe Russ there. He's demonstrating hammered coining. I like to try to show where this art form started using just primitive equipment. But the goal of what I was trying to do here, I wanted to flesh this whole exhibit out more as time went on. Unfortunately, I had a falling out with the festival shortly after this video, and we never returned. But later on, we formed the Gallery Mint Museum. And our goal was to continue this on as a private museum, not sponsored by a festival. We felt it could stand on its own as an educational attraction. So we're going to start showing the hand-hammered coining here. Now my intention was to expand this into what would be more of an authentic full mint using this. In an actual mint situation, they'd probably have a person at each station casting the planchets, first from pre-weighed amounts. You have one person measuring them, one person casting them, and you'd have two coiners here, one just with moving the tongs from the heat source, whatever that may be, probably a small furnace setup. And the coiner himself would just sit there and hammer. He wouldn't have to release the hammer or the die each time, as he's doing here. But this can be done by one person. This demonstration was a lot of fun to do. This is more of a formal demonstration because I knew I wanted to videotape this as an educational thing, but generally when we demonstrate we try to keep it a little looser and have a lot of fun joking back and forth with the audience and so forth. He's just hammering out a silver piece there. Money that'll burn a hole in your pockets. And I'd show some of the examples. Now all these pieces that we struck here too, we sold as jewelry, and this supported my endeavors to continue searching for antique equipment, building things like bellows, water wheels, edge mills, that sort of thing. And I really believe a museum that could function like this could be totally funded from just the product that it makes. We were pretty successful at it, not only at the Renaissance Festival, but later on as the Gallery Mint, and almost made it there. Our goals became a little more expensive than what we could afford, and just didn't quite make it there on the financial end of it. Joe's filing a piece of silver in the background there as I'm telling about what kind of punishments the mint takes toward that. We remove fingers and hands. One of our ongoing jokes. This was a lot of fun to build. I built pretty much everything in this exhibit. I built everything except for the cast iron presses and the rolling mills. But my goal was to actually build a better, more authentic style rolling mills and presses. That double bellows behind me there is it worked quite efficient. It was made out of wood and leather. And you'll see that bottom chamber pumping up, and what it's doing is just supplying air to that upper chamber, which supplies a continuous flow of air. I had to put one brick on it just to push it out a little bit quicker so it'd time up with the cam on the water wheel. Just casted a bar of silver there. The first step in the coining process. We first got to get it into a form which you can work in. And we found it worked better if you hammered that down a little bit. Get the grain packed together a little better first before it went into the rolling mills. And just some of the stuff you learn by actually building this sort of equipment and working with this kind of technology. Like that furnace there, I designed using a genuine illustration from I believe it was a 15th century woodcut. But it wasn't quite like the illustration, I guess, or the illustration was wrong, but it wasn't quite as efficient. I found another design. I wanted to rebuild that and make it, it worked, but it sure went through a lot of wood. This is one of the things you learn while working with it. Just adapt it, change it, make it better, make it work. Again, this is an old antique rolling mill. It actually worked. It worked from the power of the water, but unfortunately we had to work with electric pump. It really didn't supply enough water to give us enough torque to really drive that silver. You had to do it just a little at a time. But again, I wanted to make more authentic style rolling mills for this. It would be put together by a blacksmith. In fact, I have a friend in town that I talked to about doing this, that we could make this more authentic out of a blacksmith style, I guess, using iron wedges, and just like the 16th century mills at the period. Now, that was a drawing machine he was demonstrating. That was another piece of equipment that didn't work. I never ran a drawing machine before, so it needed some rebuilding. But again, I don't consider those failures. I consider them a learning experience, and next time I do it, I'll know how it works and do it better. And he's demonstrating the cutting press there. That's a punch and die that Joe had made to cut out medallion shapes. Has a little extra bump in it that we drill it out and make it into a pendant. It's probably our most popular sales item. I think we sold them for $7. But that's the press that we actually worked for our production. Joe did all the machining while we were partners. I was the engraver and he was the machinist. He was just incredibly talented in the way of putting together machines, making tooling, figuring out how to machine edge dies and things like this. Hardly ever sketched anything out, just did it from the top of his head and with high precision. He's demonstrating the scales there. Now, if these were silver planchets, they'd be weighed and checked for the full weight, and the heavy ones would be filed down, and the light ones just go back to the furnace. And then we had a little wooden butter churn that I had mocked up to represent a tumble polisher that he's pulling a polished planchet from. That was another piece of improvement that I wanted to make, is run a mechanical tumbler off the water wheel. And another thing, a thing I had planned for it is to build a Leonardo style cutting press, to show where that cutting press technology came from. And this is the edge mill that I built in, I believe I built it in '86 and rebuilt it in '88. And it's still in operation. That thing's probably rolled close to 1 million blanks through it by now. And it just has 2 engraved tracks on there. You know, rolls whatever you want, lettering, so forth. It's called a Castaigne machine from its inventor, John Castaigne. It always fascinated me where some of this technology came from. A lot of the things like rolling mills and screw presses were actually first conceived by artists of the Renaissance period. So I thought it was really appropriate and demonstration for the festivals. Give something more of an educational aspect to the period. The festivals had a lot of entertainment, but actually very little historic accuracy. So I tried to add that dimension to my demonstration here, try to make it as authentic as possible. And this is a screw press that Joe's operating now. In fact, I still own that and still work with it. As Gallery Mint, we've made all our large cent, half dime, quarter eagle reproductions on that, amongst other things. At one point, we overworked it trying to strike a large metal in it and broke the screw in it. It cost me quite a bit to repair that screw, about 3 times as much as I paid for the press. But I love screw presses. They're just simple technology, all manually operated, 2 moving parts on the whole thing, and they work quite well. It's like a hammer. They'll hammer down as far as they can and just bounce back. Of course, they're too slow for modern production, but they're quite efficient. This next step, we're going to show this drop hammer that I built, and this is totally based off of fantasy, but I tried to keep it in using Renaissance style technology, big wooden gears and so forth. They actually did use drop hammers, I think, as early as ancient Greece, but they would have been simpler machines that maybe just had a single pulley on it, and you raise the weight up by stepping into a stirrup and using your body weight to lift the weight, and then you just let go of the rope to use the hammer. And they use these in production in a lot of mints. And they're still used today. Drop hammers are still used today by blacksmiths, and as well as dice striking. That's a multiple piece collar that he's showing around there. That has lettering engraved in 2 bands around the inside of that collar. And these are assembled around the planchet with the die in place. They're tapered around the outside, and it's got a tapered ring that bolts over it to tighten it all together against the die. And worked pretty well, but it's really slow. But again, it's kind of an experimental thing. I'd never worked with split collar. I later experimented with a larger piece that it had a real thick edge. It was a real thick metal, and I showed the entire minting process around the edge of the coin, having little cherubs showing each step. There he's bolting that arrangement together. And I think we had a spacer there. The copper ones we put down on that lower ring so we could put a different edge on it. The silver ones have a unique edge. He's getting that in place. Now he's tightening the ram here. The problem with drop hammers is the weight would tend to bounce on that ram, and it'll create a double image on one side of the metal. So we try to reduce that. In fact, most of the metals we struck have a slight doubling on the reverse side. But it was a fine adjustment. If you tightened it too much, you'd reduce the hammer effect. So, and these two young boys are now lifting up that 100-pound weight. It had about an 8-to-1 gear ratio on it. So actually one of those boys could have done it by himself. Later on we started building a better version of this that we planned to put in the Gallery Mint Museum. It was built all out of oak, has nice hardwoods, and kind of a deluxe edition of this style with a few improvements. That's about half complete. Now there's a pair of tongs in there that when they pull this lever back, it's going to release that weight and of course strike the piece. This was an 1.5-inch metal with a lettered edge, so it took quite a bit of tonnage to strike it up. I think I figured around 60 tons of pressure is what that was given, maybe a little more, because some of them were actually a little overstruck with it created a wire edge around the rim. Of course, the higher you get that weight, the more pressure it took. And I spent a lot of time trying to find an engineer that could give me a calculation on how to figure that out mathematically. And I finally did, but it was such a complicated figure that I couldn't understand it, so I just used the tar system. You know, that's about right. And it worked quite well. I really struck that into the edge there. You notice you had to really kind of pry it apart. So it was a nice full strike. These were pretty popular. People would collect these year after year. And I continued that series as the Gallery Mint Museum, offering a silver medal for I think the first 3 years. And then we got so involved doing reproductions that we found that the medals just didn't really have that much of a market for them. And I continue on with my sales pitch, and you see the sales counter behind us there. But that's about it, and I appreciate you watching this video. I hope it gave you some enlightenment into the coining process, and I hope to see you around. Thank you much. Alright, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. And remember to like us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.